सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Before we begin, I'd like to make an appeal to every one of you. For those who haven't already, I request you to take ThePrint's YouTube membership, which costs just 159 rupees a month. Click on the Join button to enjoy exclusive member benefits including loyalty badges, priority responses, and member-only videos. For this, I request all our YouTube members to write in to us with their full name and email address at members@theprint.in. That's members@theprint.in, and we'll get back to you. Thank you again for all the support you've given us. The punishment of a traitor is death. 75 years ago this month, a jagged piece of tin was hammered into the forehead of Mir Maqbool Sherwani, bearing a hand-painted warning to Kashmiris to stop resisting their own liberation. Like hundreds of others, Sherwani had been engaged in partisan warfare, holding off Pakistani irregulars and troops who were rolling towards Srinagar. His brutal ritualized execution, the famous photographer Margaret Burke-White speculated, might have been inspired by, I quote, the sight of the sacred figures in St. Joseph's Chapel on the hill just above. Fighting under the command of Major General Akbar Khan, General Tariq to his men, taking his nom de guerre from Tariq ibn Ziyad, the commander folklore credits with having captured Gibraltar in 711 CE. The irregulars who killed Sherwani had been given orders to save Kashmir for Islam. Their help to their brother Muslims, Burke-White acidly observed, was accomplished so quickly that the trucks and buses would come back within a day or two, bursting with loot, only to return to Kashmir with more tribesmen to repeat their indiscriminate liberating. From a stage just a few hundred meters from the ground where Sherwani was killed, Union Home Minister Amit Shah announced last week that the government will not talk Kashmir with Pakistan, a sign that the 4-year-old secret back-channel dialogue between New Delhi and Islamabad has reached a dead end. Ever since the ceasefire on the line of control kicked in last year, just months after Indian and Pakistani combat jets, you'll remember, had duelled after the Balakot crisis, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and soon-to-retire Pakistan Army Chief Qamar Javed Bajwa are known to have been engaged in quiet conversation. Levels of violence have been low in Kashmir and many top jihadists have been jailed. Signs Pakistan has dialed down its support for terrorism to ensure the nuclear armed states don't lurch into the next crisis. Kashmir concessions, though, are necessary from India's side too, Bajwa has been telling Western governments. But that's a price New Delhi isn't willing to pay. New Delhi has held firm on the line it drew in the face of 3 wars and a long-running insurgency. And now the government believes time is finally on its side. Early in the autumn of 1947, the fires of partition began to burn in Kashmir. In a telegram sent on 12 October 1947, Islamabad recorded that Kashmir villages could be, I quote, seen burning from the Murray Hills. Then, Pakistan complained that the Kashmir Maharaja's army was unleashing a reign of terror on Jammu Muslims. Kashmir's government responded that the massacres were being carried out not by its soldiers, but invaders arriving from Rawalpindi and the Hazara district. The Kashmir response included a list of killings of Hindus and Sikhs in the Punch-Rajouri mountain belt. Later in the week, Indian signals intelligence intercepted desperate communications from outnumbered Gurkha troops of the Jammu and Kashmir state forces, who had been pinned down by then unidentified attackers at outposts near the town of Bhimbar. On October 22, troops of the 4th Jammu Kashmir Infantry made up of men raised from the violence-torn Punch region, mutinied, killing their commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Narayan Singh. These soldiers, as well as General Khan's tribal irregulars, now raced towards Srinagar, hoping to seize Kashmir before the dithering Maharaja Hari Singh made his choice to accede to India or to Pakistan. 5 days after that invasion, the Maharaja finally acceded to India. Led by Lieutenant Colonel Dewan Ranjit Rai, troops of the 1st Sikh Regiment, soon joined by many other units and supported by volunteers like Sherwani, landed in Srinagar. Ferocious fighting followed. A long grinding counter-offensive in 1948 led India to relieve the besieged garrison at Poonch and seize back Bhimber and Rajouri. To the north, the Indian army advanced up to the Uri-Titwal axis. Then Spy Chief B.N. Malik recorded in his memoirs that military commanders believed that had they been allowed to fight again in the summer of 1949, they would not have been able to go much beyond the points which they had reached. The new border, which is pretty much the same as today's line of control, coincided with the geographical limits of Kashmiri and Dogri-speaking populations, where pro-India political groups had influence. Remember also that India had just emerged as an independent country, faced all kinds of serious financial problems, and was trying to deal with the enormous dislocation and displacement caused by partition. From the outset, Spy Chief Malik has claimed, Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru privately, and I quote, agreed with the Janasangh view that Jammu and Kashmir should be fully integrated with India. The accession of Kashmir, though, created some problems. If India could claim Kashmir purely by virtue of the Maharaja signing the instrument of accession, Malik noted, then she would have to concede Pakistan's claim over Junagadh for the same reason, and also tolerate Hyderabad as an independent state in its very heartland. That would have been strategic suicide. Early on, India responded to this conundrum by promising a referendum. But the war of 1947-1948, as well as the biased reaction of the United Nations Security Council to that conflict, led New Delhi to walk back. Foreign Secretary Girija Shankar Bajpai wrote that the war meant, quote, the offer of plebiscite could not remain open. If Pakistan wanted a decision by force, and that decision went against Pakistan, he argued, it could not invoke the machinery of the United Nations to obtain what it had failed to secure by its chosen weapon. Failure in the war of 1947-1948 didn't deter Pakistan though. Following the extension of India's constitutional framework to Kashmir in 1953, India was compelled to mobilize troops to deter an attack on Kashmir. Like in 1947, Pakistani irregular forces attempted to seize the state in 1965, and Islamabad unleashed covert warfare between these years aimed at eroding India's slow integration of the state into the national constitutional framework. Even Pakistan's defeat in the war of 1971 and the landmark Shimla Agreement hammered out after it proved to be pretty short-lived. From 1983, we know from the historian Avtar Singh Bhasin's magisterial collection of official documents, terrorism had again become a major Indian concern, this time in Punjab. The stakes grew after the two countries' nuclear tests in 1998. The next year, General Parvez Musharraf launched troops across the line of control in Kargil, hoping to ratchet up pressure in the new nuclear weapons landscape. Following his failure to secure concessions on Kashmir at the Agra summit in 2001, a terrorist attack directed at India's parliament followed. General Musharraf finally drew the right lessons in 2003 after the near war which followed the attack on parliament. While each Pakistani war had failed to secure Indian concessions on Kashmir, he discovered, they imposed an asymmetrical economic burden on Pakistan. A ceasefire followed on the line of control, and a sharp drop in jihadist violence. The two countries began a secret dialogue conducted by the diplomats Tariq Aziz and Satinder Lamba. The negotiations, which envisaged significant autonomy for both sides of Kashmir, that is, on either side of the line of control, in return for an end to terrorism and recognition of the line of control as an international border, actually almost succeeded. The 26/11 attacks, though, destroyed the process for good. Following his rise to power, Prime Minister Narendra Modi reached out to Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, facilitated by common friends like the industrialist Sajjan Jindal, hoping to restore momentum to the 2003 dialogue. Their plans were snuffed out, though, by terrorist attacks in Pathankot, Uri and Pulwama. Ever since the summer of 2018, when the polo-playing Inter-Services Intelligence Officer Major General Afsandyar Ali Patodi met his research and analysis wing counterpart R. Kumar at a London hotel, India and Pakistan began re-engaging in quiet back-channel diplomacy to mitigate the risk of ending up at war. There have been a slew of informal closed-door engagements through this year in London, Bangkok, Doha and Muscat, involving mid-level political leaders, former government servants from the two countries. The contacts have fueled optimism in some circles only to be snuffed out. There were rumors, you'll recall, that Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif and Prime Minister Narendra Modi might meet at a recent multilateral summit. But the two leaders did not even exchange pleasantries. Kashmir has proved an intractable issue. General Bajwa, ThePrint had reported in March, has been asking that India reintroduce some of the features of the special constitutional status Kashmir enjoyed before August 2019. The Pakistan army, he argued, had acted against terrorism and refrained from pressurizing India during the 2020 crisis with China. The Indian government has been unmoved by these arguments, just as it has refused to budge from 1953 on. In New Delhi, policymakers believe Pakistan's terror rollback is just tactical, not goodwill for India. It's a consequence, they claim, of the threat of sanctions Pakistan faces and its own dire economic straits, not a strategic U-turn. The fears aren't unfounded. Lashkar-e-Taiba infrastructure remains intact in Pakistan and could easily be unleashed when geopolitical circumstances favor Pakistan again. As the scholar Ashley Tellis has noted, India-Pakistan competition, unlike that between many other hostile countries, is not driven by, I quote, discrete negotiable differences. Instead, he says, the problem is irreducible, rooted in long-standing ideological, territorial and power political antagonisms that are fueled by Pakistan's irredentism, its army's desire to subvert India's ascendancy as a great power and exact revenge for past Indian military victories. From partition to the present, those grievances and the potential consequences of each crisis have grown in both countries and for their peoples. The political incentives to end this dispute, though, have diminished, as has trust. 75 years after the first shots of the India-Pakistan conflict were fired, we've come to see peace as just punctuation between crises. I'm Praveen Swami and I'm National Security Editor of ThePrint. Thank you for watching Security Code.